No team in the history of Formula One has won every race in a season, and despite Mercedes' incredible car this year, that remains the case, as Formula One celebrated its 70th birthday today. Welcome back to the Formula One Grid Talk podcast. Today we'll be reviewing today's 70th anniversary Grand Prix. We are powered by the F1 Chronicle. Visit f1chronicle.com for news, reviews and opinions on all things F1. Hosting today will be me, George Howson, and joining me today are sports journalist Louis Edwards.
Hello.
F1 expert Alex Booth.
Hello.
And engineering student Owain Medford.
Oh.
So, lads, it was fair to say it was a very quick race today. Likes to flag no interruptions at all, and a real surprise winner, Owain. I mean, it's one of them. I mean, you always think, Max Verstappen starting on the alternate strategy, starting on the hard tyres, is in with a chance, but you don't really believe it. But he was just untouchable today. An incredible race by the Dutchman.
Yeah, I thought, obviously, seeing him go to start the race on the hard tyre, I thought, obviously that's gives him a position to gain some places. I didn't expect him to get such a good start though, and I honestly expected the Mercedes to have the pace even in the hot weather. I thought they'd sorted out their sort of hot weather issues, and he was the class of the field, to be honest.
Absolutely, yeah. Mercedes struggling in the hot weather. Some really nasty blisters on their tyres, and the Red Bull just kept its tyres a lot better. But Louis, like I said, Max Verstappen has to take a lot of the credit. I mean, he came out behind Bottas after his second stop, but he sailed straight through, and it was very reminiscent of Vettel at Malaysia in 2015. He just kept his tyres better and just saw it over to the end.
Yeah, he did a remarkable job. Like, you could see this night and day with the difference between the Mercedes tyre and then Max's tyres. I think you got to question why a lot of people didn't also qualify on those hard tyres, because they were doing the business for Red Bull, and it allowed Max to really go deep into the race with his management, and then he had the opportunities all in his hands to then box for the mediums and then be able to then cover Bottas off by then boxing for the hards later on. But no, it was incredible strategy for the Red Bull team, and sort of aided by just how great Max drove today.
Yeah, Verstappen, we've said it loads of times. Everybody says it, future world champion in the making. I mean, it's something special. As well, Alex, it's a massive relief for Red Bull because that car has not been the most balanced, but today it looked on rails.
Yeah, Red Bull were confident, weren't they, in the opening tests before the pandemic really escalated, and I think they were pretty sure they were going to be running Mercedes close. It turned out that in the opening races, Mercedes was so dominant, although Verstappen was clearly the best of the rest. This afternoon, they got the strategy bang on right. It was a textbook drive from Verstappen, no mistakes, did everything he had to do, and it was a drive worthy of a champion, really. If I think if it had been a different driver in the car, you'd have seen, well, this guy is really good, and we all know how good Verstappen is, and we've said it for a long time. I'm surprised that Mercedes got it wrong tactically, but having said that, there's been a few times in the past when they have done, and it's shown. And today was one of them. But I'm just going back to what you said at the start of the podcast, where a team has not won every Grand Prix in the season. I fear that was going to happen this year, actually, with Mercedes. Not that I'm criticising a single thing that they've done. It's what they do is a fantastic job. But I suppose from a neutral, you want to see a different team winning, and that's what we've got today.
Yeah, it's what we want to see at the end of the day. We want to see the sport being competitive. We want to see a different car up there at the top, and we've got it after just 5 rounds, thankfully. Fair play to Max Verstappen, and Verstappen as well. He's second in the championship now. He's ahead of Valtteri Bottas after today's result. He is Lewis Hamilton's closest challenger at the moment. He was so comfortable in the end. He was 11 seconds. He said to his race engineer to make sure he has a drink and sanitizes his hands. So he's just on another level. If you can make jokes and stuff while he's wringing the neck out of that Red Bull, amazing to see. But yeah, like I said, Lewis Hamilton to place, Owain. To be honest with you, I think he'd probably be happy with that, given how the race was going and given how eaten up his tyres was. He was trying to do the one stop, but it was too much for even him in the end.
Yeah, he didn't seem overly disappointed. I don't know whether that's just maybe it's just not showing it particularly sort of outwardly or anything like that. But yeah, he sort of seemed to sort of resign himself, and you realise he got beat fair and square and everything, and it's just. And I feel like Mercedes have looked a bit tactically neutered this year, which is a bit weird. They don't seem to be as on the ball as they normally are. And they could have. I don't think he could have stretched the hard tyres out all the way to the end. I don't think that was possible for him. I think he would have been caught because Verstappen had the pace. Clearly, I think Hamilton did as best he could to try and manage that car, but in the end, I think it was on a hide into nothing, as it were.
Yeah, I think he was really risking a puncture, to be honest with you, the way those rear tyres were looking. And we did see some punches in the F2 race today as well, so it was definitely a big risk for them. Didn't pay off in the end, but he gave it a go at least. And staying longer on his second stint did help him beat Valtteri Bottas, Louis. And I think Bottas is going to be massively disappointed with this. He was on pole, he led in the opening stages, fended off Hamilton successfully, and ends up third and loses more ground.
Yeah, I think, as Owain was saying, Mercedes really haven't been on the ball with their strategy, and that was quite obvious from Bottas' strategy. I think they could have probably made him go a bit longer, in that second stint. I think they did box him maybe a little too early, and that just opened the door for Lewis to be able to just steamroll past him as he did. But you can't take away from Bottas that today, he did drive a very good drive, at the beginning to fend off Hamilton. And then from there, he was basically a passenger in the race, got done by Verstappen very quickly, and then he got done by Lewis later on in the race. I don't think he should be disappointed in himself. Maybe just the strategy was, not favourable towards him today.
Yeah, he tried to cover off Verstappen, and it didn't really work, unfortunately for him. And he ended up getting beaten by Hamilton in the end. I think he's going to be frustrated with himself and maybe a bit frustrated with the team as well. It's not really going for him at the moment. Incredible bad luck in the last race as well, obviously. Third in the championship for Bottas. He's got some work to do. But he will be buoyed by the fact that he's got a deal for next year at least. He will be racing for Mercedes in 2021. And fourth place, Alex, and a guy that I think is making a very strong claim to be the driver of the season so far, Charles Leclerc in that Ferrari. He made the one-stop work. He's the only driver I can really think of that did the one-stop and made it work. He ends up fourth place. He even kept Hamilton behind for a little bit at the end.
It was absolutely sensational from Charles Leclerc today, and it outlines just the potential that the guy has. And as we know, the Ferrari this season is not exactly its most competitive, and he wasn't going to make it easy for Hamilton, and he made Hamilton work for it. But to make the tyres last for that long, he was setting fastest lap at one point. Obviously, that wasn't going to last because Hamilton was going to come into the pit and put new tyres on. But I think I agree with you 100%. I think Charles Leclerc really is making a claim for the man of the season. I mean, viewers of this podcast will remember I gave it to Carlos Sainz last year for the reason of outperforming the car, and I think it's going to be the same this season with Leclerc, because in the first 5 races, apart from the second race in Austria, where he did that do or die maneuver at the start against Vettel, he's been outstanding and thoroughly deserving of the best of the rest, I'd say, because I'm putting Verstappen in the same category as the driver. So best of the rest.
Yeah, did a fantastic job. And I can't even say this, but Charles Leclerc is actually up to fourth place in the championship. And that catapults Ferrari into third in the Constructors' Championship as well. So he is doing absolute bits. Charles Leclerc has scored 45 of Ferrari's 55 points this season, which is ridiculous, considering he's got a 4-time champion in the other Ferrari. But we will get on to him eventually when we get down that far in the order. Now, fifth place, and a guy who's been under massive pressure recently, Owain, Alexander Albon. I mean, he pitted really early onto the hard tyres, and he made the strategy work in the end. Some incredible moves around the outside of Copse to end up fifth.
Yeah, absolutely excellent drive from him. He really had a measure of the car. He seemed to be enjoying it. Didn't seem to be having so many of the issues that we've seen earlier in the season. He seemed like the hard tyres and him and the car just kind of really gelled together, and he used that to good effect to get to an excellent fifth place, which is really great.
Yeah, great by him to get fifth in the end. I was kind of fearing for him. I was thinking after he stopped early on, I was thinking, oh no, it's going to be a repeat of last week, and he's really going to struggle here. But fair play to him. Great result for him in the end. And finishes ahead of the Racing Points, Louis, who we were expecting a little bit more from these this weekend. Nico Hülkenberg qualified third, ended up in seventh. Lance Stroll started sixth, ended up sixth. I mean, a solid day for them in terms of the points they've got, but obviously they have been damaged in terms of the penalty that they got this week as well for the copying of the parts.
Yeah, it was pretty, sort of standard race from Racing Point, more or less starting where they finished. Hulkenberg was a little unlucky. He was quite comfortably in 5th place until they decided to box him late on in the race for a set of the soft tyres. I don't know whether that was due to graining or like the fact that his tyres were about to go, or they wanted to set the fastest lap, but either or, that dropped him right down the order, which is a shame because it would have meant that Hulkenberg, in technically his first race back in Formula One, would have finished ahead of Lance Stroll. Yeah, I think over the last 2 races, we've expected a lot more from this Racing Point to really actually be, challenging for, maybe that sort of last podium place, but they did not live up, and again, they didn't live up to expectations.
Yeah, it's odd. Why did they pit Hulkenberg? I get it. Was it because he was running out of tyres? I mean, he seemed pretty comfortable to me. It's a bit of a strange one why they decided to do that. If they were trying to go for the fastest lap, they didn't get it, unfortunately. Hamilton got it. Yeah, I mean, we've got to mention Hulkenberg a little bit more, Alex, because it was an incredible effort in qualifying for him. He qualified 3rd. And we're all thinking this could be it. This could finally be the day when Hulkenberg gets that podium. It didn't work out for him in the end, unfortunately, but he's firmly in the shop window. I mean, he's got a great chance of getting a seat next year, I think, after this performance.
No, he's doing his credentials the world of good, and a seat in 2021 could be on the cards for him. I mean, personally, I thought it was a travesty that he was out of the drive at the end of last year anyway, but it was the ideal candidate to replace Perez because he's not long been out of Formula One. It was terribly unlucky last week when he couldn't take the start, but a fantastic job in qualifying. Put it 3rd on the grid, ahead of his teammate who's got more experience with that team in its current guise. I just feel at the Racing Point, I think it's a better qualifying car than it is a race car. It seems quicker over 1 lap on pure speed than it is on race pace, and because they had a brief point. I think it was in the second race in Austria when Perez was dicing towards the end and they were quite high up. But on the race day, they've not really set the world alight. I mean, obviously, look at last week. Lance Stroll fell apart really towards the end, and they were nowhere. So yeah, that's an area I think they need to improve on. But as for Hulkenberg himself, he's done himself. He's won himself a lot of favours this week. You saw the reaction he got after qualifying, with all the drivers giving him the respect he thoroughly deserved. I agree with Louis. I don't quite understand where they were coming from with a tyre change. I personally think they probably were going for the fastest lap, which was a bit ambitious because Lewis had just done the fastest lap after pitting quite recently. So, but anyway, we probably won't know the answer to that. But that cost Hulkenberg a better result than what he was on for, I think.
Yeah, he could have ended up 5th place, I think, if he didn't do that pit stop, and obviously he didn't get the bonus point for the fastest lap in the end. 8th place, Owain, and the guy had a pretty quiet race, but again, solid points from Esteban Ocon. Started 14th, ended up 8th. Good day for him.
Yeah, quiet race, like you say. He obviously he came from 11th on the grid to go up to 8th, so that's good 3-place gain. Obviously, he's got the help of the strategy, which obviously Norris wouldn't have had, and that's kind of, I think, where his placement has come from. But yeah, it was a good race for him. I didn't see any big issues like for the other Renault. So I think he's proven that he's a good solid driver, and I think Renault will be happy with having him there. Just as part of the season.
Yeah, and they're going for next year as well. He's a very good young driver. We'll see how he gets on at Renault next year as well. He's doing a good job this year. Fair play to him. And again, I mean, Alex said about the Racing Point being probably a better qualifying car than a race car. Another car that's struggling in the race recently, Louis, is the McLarens. I mean, they struggled in the qualifying as well, to be fair. 10th and 12th for him and Norris and Sainz. But 9th and 13th in the race, I mean, admittedly, bad pit stops. But again, it's not really where you'd expect him to be.
No, like you compare this to the pace last week, this is an awful result for McLaren. They were doing so well, and I think a lot of people are expecting more or less the same. But no, they just seem to come into this race absolutely no pace whatsoever. I think maybe the tyre compounds were not favouring them with the setup of their car, and yeah, they were just really struggling. Norris was sat in 8th for quite a significant portion of this race, but just his pace just sort of died towards the end. Carlos, he looked like he might be able to make up a few places, but again, his pace just died. And yeah, of course, also mixed with the bad pit stops, but it still doesn't really make up for the fact that McLaren were really not where we expected them to be.
No, disappointing day for them. Still fourth in the Constructors' Championship, but they really should expect to be higher than Ferrari at the moment with the pace we'd expect with their car. Hopefully Spain can be a better race for them than what the home races have been, frankly. 10th and 11th, the Alpha Tauris. We've got Daniel Kvyat with the last point. And Pierre Gasly, Pierre Gasly's got to be really disappointed with this. I mean, he pitted really early, his first pit stop, but again, just the pace not there. He qualified in 7th, ended up 11th.
Yeah, I was thinking that during the race. I thought Gasly's going to be really disappointed with this because he qualified extremely well. And in the race, he was pulling some pretty ballsy manoeuvres. Let's say he was very competitive. And yeah, but he still ended up behind his teammate, and that's probably a strategic error from either himself or the team. And I think AlphaTauri are going to look back on this race with disappointment. I think they could have got a lot more out of it than they did. But at least they got 2 cars home. And they don't have an expensive repair bill like they did last week.
Yeah, I mean, they struggled with the tyres this week, but obviously Kvyat at least made the finish this time, so he did better on his tyres this week than last week. No, I mean, I've been looking forward to this a little bit, but at the same time, it's just really disappointing. I mean, Sebastian Vettel, 12th place, Owain. I mean, he couldn't get through to Q3 on the faster tyres. He was one of the few guys to use the softs in qualifying. Still couldn't get through to the top 10. And in the race, he just spins by himself through turn 1 and just ruins any hope he's got of points. It's just unbelievable, isn't it?
We're running out of ways to quantify how much of a fall from grace it is. Like you say, he couldn't get through to Q3 on soft tyres, where when his teammate has done. His teammate has driven to an outstanding 4th place, and he's managed to spin it and end up. The best thing I can say about it really is that he managed to spin it and then end up ahead of Sainz as his race result. Like, that's it. That's pretty much it. And we, he's clearly not happy. We heard it in the race on the radio with him saying, we talked about the scenario before the race. We didn't want to, end up behind Sainz. Because obviously Sainz had the pit stop issue, so that might have messed with Ferrari's strategy a bit. But that's airing their dirty laundry very, very publicly, and it's not looking good. And any pretense, like, you can absolutely believe that Ferrari did not. I don't think Ferrari did offer him, like he says, offer him a contract. I don't think they've developed the car around him at all. I just think they want rid of him, and it's making him look worse with obviously the spins that might be caused slightly because of him being not focused on when they're developing the car.
He's really reminded me of Alonso when they first switched to Honda engines at McLaren. He's really reminded, just the way he's going about complaining. I mean, at least Alonso, he put in some incredible drives in that McLaren. Vettel isn't doing that. I think, to be honest with you, Louis, I think part of it boils down to the fact that Leclerc can drive the wheels off anything. He's a bit like Hamilton. He's a bit like Verstappen. He can drive the wheels off anything and make it work. Vettel is a bit like Raikkonen. He needs a good front end on that car. He needs a very stable car to be able to do well. And that car is anything but that. But it's also the fact that he's just been dropped by Ferrari like this. He probably doesn't feel a real need to do well at the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine it's so demotivating being in that team at the moment. You're around people that, well, just don't really want you there anymore. I think they made their intentions very clear that they don't want him there, that they're favouring Leclerc, very obviously. They're kind of just waiting for him to leave before then they bring in Carlos Sainz and then hopefully build a sort of a better, team around, Leclerc and Sainz. Yeah, for someone who wanted to join Ferrari so badly back in 2014, he got his wish, and then just to be just sort of cast aside by them, I imagine that's hit him really hard, and that's why we're seeing such, poor performances. While with Charles, he knows that he has the backing of that entire team. The car is set up for him. He's going to be there for a long time. and he feels so much more comfortable. And I think it's just that feeling of comfort which is allowing him to just push as much as possible, and he's getting amazing performances from it.
Yeah, Leclerc is just working miracles in that car, frankly. Vettel is struggling so much. He's still 13th in the championship. That hasn't changed, but he's behind Ocon, Sainz, Gasly. And I look at the table, Vettel is on 10 points, and who's behind him? Nico Hulkenberg with one race. Is the guy behind him in the championship. It's dismal. It is absolutely dismal. I think both parties at this moment just want to separate. Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, I almost thought he'd park it once he spun. I was just like, that's it. Like, you know, go home. You know, what more could you do? Like, he's racing for 12th. For 12th, and like you say, he's 13th in the championship. He's 13th. No Ferrari is that bad. No Ferrari is that bad. Like, especially, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's an incredible situation to find themselves in. I mean, Vettel is the one really letting the team down at this point. It's bizarre, isn't it? It really is. But that's the situation we find ourselves in. I mean, why do you guys think that Vettel is struggling? Let us know at F1 Chronicle, or comment on the live stream. Obviously, we do live stream this out on Facebook as well. I will be looking for the comments in between the break between these two shows. Yeah, moving further down the order. Daniel, I mean, we give it a quick mention. Daniel Ricciardo, Alex, he had an excellent qualified fifth. It just seemed to, a bit like Pierre Gasly, just seemed to fade away, and then obviously had his spin that really condemned him to a 14th place finish in the end.
Yeah, he did. He wasn't particularly quick in the race, even prior to his spin, and that spin, I think he saw Sainz on the side of him, and he just panicked and got the throttle input a bit wrong, and around she went. And yeah, it's not really what you expect from a driver of Daniel's caliber. It's slightly similar to an extent with the case with Vettel at Ferrari. Ricciardo and Renault are parting at the end of the season. Maybe a question. I don't know what his motivation is going to be like, but in qualifying he's there a lot. But certainly today he didn't do particularly well, and it's one that he'll want to forget. But the next race is only just around the corner, so he can quickly put that to the back of his mind.
Yeah, I'll be hoping for a lot better in Spain next week. Hopefully, face the case. Yeah, I mean, good over one lap, but just not really doing it in the race right now. Dev was meant to be on today's show, but unfortunately couldn't make it. But he did tell me to make sure that I mentioned that he's very happy that Kimi Räikkönen did not finish last. Räikkönen finished 15th at the end. The most he could do in that car, really. But yeah, let's just round off the other guys down here. Romain Grosjean, 16th for Haas. Antonio Giovinazzi, 17th for Alfa Romeo. And then the Williams is again, Owain. I mean, George Russell especially is doing it in qualifying. He's doing bits in that car. But in the race, it's still struggling. It's still the slowest on the grid.
Yeah, there's just no race pace in it. I know that Latifi had a few issues, and Russell wasn't obviously, he obviously put in a good effort in qualifying, but I don't think for a minute that we've overnight gone to a significantly worse driver who would lose 3 places, just like that. So it's got to be race pace. I think race pace based, which is it's weird actually. Obviously the Alpha doesn't have any qualifying pace, but it can be made in the race by the efforts of Giovinazzi and Raikkonen. But for some reason, the Williams problems extend to race pace, which I think is arguably a worse problem than just being slow in qualifying.
Well, yeah, I mean, races where the points are paid at the end of the day, you'd much rather a race pace than a qualifying pace. But yeah, they don't really have too much of either. But yeah, the qualifying is not too bad. I mean, Russell's made it to, I think, 4 Q2 sessions out of 5 this year, which is a ridiculous effort. But he can't hold it together in the race. Not even he can rescue that car. Nicholas Latifi was the last of the finishers. He was 19th. And Kevin Magnussen did not finish the race. But I have to give a mention to his ridiculous move on, I think it was Latifi, wasn't it, Louis? I mean, earned himself a 5-second penalty. I mean, what is it with those Haas drivers and the defending? It's scandalous.
Yeah, we saw only little movements, at least from Grosjean in the last race. He was just kind of just nudging, driving out. But that was awful. The fact that he just came across the entire track that was not far off, smashing into the side of Latifi's car.
It made contact.
Did that?
Yeah, you saw
some bits fell
flying
off.
Christ.
I don't think you can come on like that. I don't think you can come back onto the track like that. That's ridiculous. Like you're on a runoff area. You've got to slow down at least, because it's very clear that Latifi's going to follow his line. So you can't expect him to get out of the way.
He was all the way on the other side of the track. It's not like he was like parked next to the track when he came back on. He was, about taking the normal line into Vale, and next thing you know, you've got Magnussen storming across the track. Yeah, stupid, very stupid. I'm surprised they wouldn't put penalty like a penalty point on his license for that, because it is incredibly reckless. Just to do something.
They might still do. Given a
Could
review.
do, yeah, it could do.
I mean, he went so far wide, he was basically in Milton Keynes. Like, I don't think you can keep your foot in on that one and expect to get away with it. I think 5 seconds is probably. I think it was a 5-second penalty he got.
Yeah,
but that's quite kind.
Well, to be honest, he get no warnings. He's got no driving standard warnings. He just got a flat out penalty. So to show the severity of it.
It's definitely worth it, wasn't it? I mean, it was all over like 18th place as well. Like, what are you doing? It's absolutely ridiculous. The Haas guys have got to start the drive. I mean, Magnussen might have seen, because he obviously went out after one lap last time. You might have just seen what Grosjean did and just thought, right, now it's my turn. I need to one up that.
Well, now they've probably been told that they can't race each other sort of that harshly. They're like, right, I've got to get my fix somewhere.
Someone else where we're not picking up the bill if things go wrong.
Oh my days. All right, okay, lads. So, driver of the day. I don't think Magnussen will win in this one. Driver of the day from everybody. I find it incredibly hard not to go for Charles Leclerc, but also Max Verstappen being the first non-Mercedes winner. I'm going to give it to Max. But Charles Leclerc, a very close second for me. Owain?
I'm going to go Charles Leclerc. Obviously, it's an amazing performance by Max, but to be honest, I think it was helped by the car, obviously. But with Leclerc as slow with this, how slow that Ferrari is, I think that's an incredible performance to get that up to fourth. That Ferrari.
Fair enough, Louis.
I'm going to go a bit wide here and give it to Nico. I think that's a brilliant race. One of the most demanding tracks. He's only been back in sport 2 weeks, and I think he should have finished fifth. I think that weird pit stop really cost him, that place. I think he drove a tremendous race. It was P4 for quite a significant portion of that race. It was just Charles being able to sort of do that one stop, which took that away from him. But yeah, Nico Hülkenberg.
Yeah, massive physical effort around Silverstone. I mean, he's had to wear tape, I think, down his back and his neck and everything just to make it through the race. Alex?
I think a lot of drivers deserve that accolade today. I mean, obviously Verstappen drove a brilliant race and got the victory. As you say, the first non-Mercedes driver. Charles Leclerc, outstanding drive from him. Even Lewis Hamilton. I mean, he drove for so long on those wrecked tyres and came back into the pit, got a fresh set, got the fastest lap, and got ahead of his teammate, which was probably the best he could have hoped for given the circumstances. And Nico Hülkenberg, first full race that he's competed in, because he didn't start last week. And to be as competitive was Alex Albon, for a guy who's been under so much pressure, drove his heart out today. Some fantastic overtaking manoeuvres. I think I'm going to give it to Leclerc as well. I think, given the equipment that he's got, I find it very hard not to give it to Verstappen because of what he's done. But I think Leclerc just edged him because, given the performance disadvantage of that Ferrari, to drive the race he did and finish fourth, when I was fully expecting the racing points to be behind the Mercedes, it was an outstanding effort from him.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair play on all those choices. I mean, there's some brilliant drives up and down the grid today. But yeah, so we have an official store for merchandise. If you guys want to support the show, just go to the F1 Chronicles website to get custom mugs, t-shirts, and more. We're now broadcasting this show live on Facebook as well, so be sure to give the Facebook page a like, F1 Chronicle on Facebook. We're also available on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Omni Studio, Pocket Cast. Just search for the F1 Grid Talk and all of those. We've got a big back catalogue of shows as well, coming to 50 episodes now altogether. Not just race pieces either. We also have interviews with people like Mario Sola and more documentary-style pieces like Tiregate and Ayrton Senna. And yeah, we'll be back on Wednesday to preview the Spanish Grand Prix. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.
Bye.
Right.